What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others. Hey, hero community. We are looking to feature more amazing social impact heroes on our show, and I'll bet all you listeners out there know a few that deserve to be recognized. If you or anyone you know should be on our radar, then you absolutely have to nominate them to be an iSpark Change social impact hero. Just click the link in the show notes below to help us find out about more people that are doing great things. What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because that's your most valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while, I promise. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and our guest definitely does just that. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, Melissa Bright. I'm going to bring her onto the show, and then I'm going to read her bio. So Melissa is on a mission to help people not feel alone in their struggles. She is the host and creator of the Bright Side of Life podcast, a mental health podcast that navigates and discusses people's successful journeys to happiness despite their struggles. After losing her mom at the age of 25, she would spend the next 10 years not processing the trauma, losing her self-confidence along the way, and feeling alone in her struggles. This all came to a head in 2020 when the whole world was hurting. Melissa decided to turn her pain into her purpose and start healing. Simultaneously, while starting therapy, she started thinking about her true purpose in life. She looked out into the world and saw other people hurting as well and wanted to help. Now she puts joy back into people's hearts through her podcast, The Bright Side of Life, where she talks to people that have successfully navigated their way back to joy and happiness despite their struggles, pain, and grief. Welcome to the iSpark Change podcast, Melissa. How are you doing today?
I am doing so wonderful, Rick. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm very excited to have our conversation.
Yes, as am I, because if you recall, I was a guest on your show probably about a year ago, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I think it was in March of last year.
yeah, yes, there you go. Thank you for remembering. It was in March of last year, and that was early on in kind of my podcast journey. And then here we are on the iSpark Change podcast. I always knew I wanted to start one, and then here we are. So I appreciate you being a guest. Um, so let's dive right in, shall we? Fair
Let's
enough.
do
All
it.
right. So, Melissa, we see you as someone who is spreading positive change in the world because of the work you do. Your actions have a positive effect on humanity and others through your podcast and everything. So that you're someone that we call a social impact hero. Now, every hero, if you ever watch a Marvel movie, right? Every hero has an origin story. Okay, so what's your hero origin story?
Yeah. So is this like where my podcast came from or how my story transpired, I guess, my own personal story? Let me just clarify that.
I'd say your personal story, because
Okay.
that would be that'd be going back to, like, Spider-Man, way when he got bit by the spider, way back. It's not just later on. So we'll go back to the
All
original
right.
times.
Perfect. Perfect. So one of the most biggest parts of my life and my story that I have to mention is that I did have my daughter whenever I was 16 years old. So that obviously would play a big crucial role in my life. And so when I was pregnant at 16, my mom and I became so much closer. Not that we weren't close before, not that we didn't have a good relationship, but once that is laid out on the table and all the secrets are pretty much gone, um we became extremely, extremely close. And I was a single mom basically after the time that my daughter was 1 years old. And so my mom was my biggest support. I would work on weekends because obviously I was still in high school. And she was my support. She was my best friend. And then not even 10 years later, my mom was diagnosed with COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. And unfortunately, she was diagnosed with that. And then 8 short months later, she had passed away. And this became the huge defining moment in my life. And I would not realize this until years later. Of course, I knew this was my worst nightmare that could ever possibly come true. But it happened at such a pivotal time in my life. I was 25 years old. My daughter was 10 years old. And I was just about to go into teenage years with my daughter, losing my mom, who I needed more than any time I did in my life because I would need my mom. And so for the next 10 years, I would really just stay busy. I thought I actually handled my mom's death pretty well. What I actually did is I just didn't deal with it. I didn't think about it. I pushed it down. I wasn't in denial that she was gone, but I didn't think about it. And then like Rick had said in the bio, that all came to a head in 2020. We all know what happened and I was extremely depressed. I wanted to talk to my mom about this craziness that was happening in the world and I couldn't talk to her. And I basically had a breakdown one night after watching a fried green tomatoes movie with her, or with my daughter. And that was a movie that we always used to watch together. And I started therapy, and simultaneously, like he said, while starting my therapy, I had also listened to a podcast and they had asked, you can find your purpose by asking yourself when you look out into the world, what makes your heart hurt? And for me, I knew what made my heart hurt. It was people feeling alone in their struggles because that's how I felt. I felt alone. I had my daughter, I had my boyfriend. They were amazing people, but neither one of them had lost their parents, obviously. And I just felt really, really alone. And so, how was I going to solve that problem? I wanted to have conversations with people and have these hard conversations and then ultimately how they would find their path back to the bright side of life, which in a lot of my stories you will hear from my guests that it's not so much, oh, I just got to the bright side of life, I just leaped over there. It's actually a journey, and the journey goes on for quite a while and usually your whole life. But that's my origin story in a bigger nutshell.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Melissa. And I know, I mean, obviously deaths can be difficult at any point in life, and especially when you're close, as close as you it sounds like you were with your
Mhm.
mother and her being by your side and everything with your daughter being born and all of that. So at the tell me at the time when it sounds like you kind of compartmentalized her death and just decided to go about life, like what how did that manifest itself in the way you interacted with others, or in the way you kind of showed up in the world? Because I'll preface that by saying, you know as a social impact hero, where what we consider you now, right, a big part of being a hero is really you know how you show up to others and how you inspire others and motivate them. So you've gotten to this point now, but where were you then when when times were really tough?
Yeah, that is such a great question. So, like I said, a lot of it, and it's a very great word that you said, compartmentalizing. That is exactly what I did, which I need to remember that. Something that I've done since I've been in high school, since I've been a little kid, is I cannot stand the thought of people being alone, feeling left out. Um, and so, even after losing my mom, once you go through something like that, you tend to become even more empathetic. And I was already an empathetic person. I've known that forever. My brother wasn't treated very well by our father, and I always had such great empathy for him. But that just opened my eyes up to a whole nother world. Something that I noticed about myself is I felt at that time that I lost my mom that I lost so much of like my innocence, where I knew that pain existed. I had experienced painful things before, but nothing on the level of losing a parent. And I feel like that really kind of made me realize that life isn't fair all the time. Especially like you can ask the question like why me? Why is this happening to me? Like literally the last thing in the world I thought would happen was losing my mom at the age of 25. So I do think a little bit of me just thinking I don't think I'm not innocent anymore, and that would kind of really like mess with my head a little bit. But I don't think I ever treated anybody differently just because I've always been such an empathetic person. And I feel like after that, I just became that much more empathetic and wanting to understand people's place of pain and grief.
So would you say, I mean, empathy is obviously a wonderful trait to have. I mean, I think the world needs more of it. Um, I would say, especially, in the challenging times that we're in. So would you say that you utilize that empathy in your podcast? You utilize it with your guests and when you're having conversations with them?
Oh, 100%. And I actually came to an epiphany the other day that I would actually like to share with you because I've only told my boyfriend. And so when I'm telling my story to other people, I've told them, I was in college whenever my mom passed away. And I actually think I was going into my senior year. And I started college to go to be broadcast journalism. I wanted to be the news anchor on Channel 5. Started that college, and literally my first teacher was like, "You probably don't even wanna be here, and I'm gonna tell you why." And she was so right. And what I realized was I could never be the person that could walk up to a mom after their kid had just been killed or something and put a microphone in their face and say, "How do you feel?"
Yeah.
Now what's crazy is that is literally what I do on my podcast, but in such a different way. Like, I talk to people about really hard stories about losing their kids or losing parents. It's just in the way that I wanted to do it and not, um so being empathetic is, I think, probably one of my biggest gifts that I have for my podcast. I have extremely hard stories on here, uh, but that's what I want people to know is that life, unfortunately, is not always rainbow and unicorns, and there are probably people out there going through similar things, and I'm going to bring them to you to show you that there can be joy and happiness after pain and grief.
Yeah. So it sounds like that. I mean, that's obviously important for you is that it sounds like that's a big part of your purpose is to show people that they can overcome something that they're going through. They can get to that bright side of life, right?
Yeah.
Like the title is. So in your in your work, as I said, we would call you a social impact hero. Would you call yourself a hero? Do you view yourself as a hero in the work that you do? Do you view it that way?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Um, well, I'm very hard on myself. So sometimes I will say, like, I don't even know if I'm making a change. However, the one thing that I did when I started my podcast that I said that I was going to do was social media was now going to be everything was going to be real, and I was not going to just post highlight reels. If I was going through something, people were going to know about it, and that was not for attention, that was to know that people are going through real things. And when I opened up about my story and things that I felt shameful for like not finishing college and not buying a house by the age of 30, all these things, people started to reach out to me because of me opening up about my vulnerabilities and my story. And that has never happened in my life. Like, of course, we have our best friends that feel comfortable, with you to like might share something. I mean, I've had men older than me that have thanked me for me sharing my story, that they struggle with their mental health. And so when I get those messages in whatever form, whether it's email, social media, those are the ones that do remind me that Melissa, yes, you are making a change. I think we just all sometimes want it on such a grander level that you're like, "Are am I making the change?" Um, but yes, I do think, and I think it's very hard to say that about ourselves sometimes, but I am a social impact hero, Rick,
All
and I'm
right,
going
yay.
to say that. I'm gonna say that.
All right, good. You can now use that on your social media. You have to start saying, "Hey, I'm a social impact hero. I've been dubbed
Yes.
one. I have the sword. You know, I'm dubbing on your shoulders right now in the on the
Love
screen
it.
on the screen." Um, so part of the criteria, we have an acronym for hero. Is that a hero? The H stands for, hero honors their purpose, because your purpose is how you show up in the world. It's the foundation of why you do what you do. So how would you say that you really honor your purpose as a hero? So now that we've come to the conclusion that yes, that you are a hero. So how do you honor your purpose as a hero, on your show?
Yeah, I think the biggest way is just being real and being vulnerable, and being authentic. Whatever word you wanna put in there, anything that I talk about on social media, I'm not going to, I'm going to be that person. So whether you meet me on a Zoom call, you meet me in person, I am that real person all the time. And I'm going to be vulnerable with you. If you walked up to me at a grocery store and you wanted to have a conversation about something you're struggling with, um, this isn't simply a facade just to get people to listen to a podcast. This is I have struggled so much with, which we haven't even talked about, self-love and self-worth, because when I lost my mom, there's so much of I did not know about being an adult that I lost, that I didn't know how to call, like, I couldn't call my mom to ask her how to do taxes and all this stuff, and so what society told me I should be was a successful person who owned houses and married and all this stuff. I wasn't. And so I lacked a lot of self worth. And so one of my biggest missions, not only with my podcast, is not wanting people to feel alone in their struggles, but it's also that you are deserving of self love, that you are worthy of success and happiness and joy and all those other things. And so I do try to embrace that, and that is my whole life's mission, to be that way on and off the microphone, on or off social media, which feels good. Like, it feels good. I don't have to make posts on social media and then be like, "Oh man, but I have to make sure I act that way because that's how they see me on social media." They're going to get that no matter what.
Yeah, so I'd say you're definitely are honoring your purpose in that regard with with your podcast and just in everyday life. Not just on the bright side of life, but oh, do you see how I did that? Not just on everyday life, but the bright
Y-
side of life. I didn't even realize
Yes.
that. Nice little pun there. Hey, yay me! So
I know. I need to remember that.
yeah, there you go. Another one you can
I
take for the
know.
day. So, okay, you talked about self-love and self-worth. So, one thing that is always interesting to me is, on our journey, on any hero's journey, there are going to be challenges, there are going to be obstacles, there are going to be those battles you have to face, those demons that you come across, those dragons you have to slay. So, would you say that's been the biggest battle in your hero's journey? Has it been the journey with the self-love and the self-worth?
So, I don't I actually think this has been the greatest journey to get back my self-love and self-worth, because once I figured out my purpose, because before this I was a travel agent, and I knew that wasn't what I wanted my work to be. I felt that I was meant to be here for a bigger purpose and to help people in a different way, not by selling them great vacations, which I'm glad I did. Um and so once I found my purpose, of course, I had those limiting beliefs like, can I really do this? But I was so focused and I knew that I could have conversations with people. And of course, I was nervous to have these interviews or whatever, but no, every single day last year, what I tried to do was do something that scared me. It could be the smallest thing every single day, and when you do those things and you step out of your comfort zone, it is literally like proving to yourself, "Hey, Melissa, look at what you just did. You were so scared like 5 minutes before that. Look where you are now. You're still alive." Uh, like, because we think the worst things could possibly happen. And then when you really break it down, you're like, okay, the worst thing that could happen is whatever, and it's not that bad. So this journey has literally helped me with my self-worth and my self-love to prove like I created all of this. Like this, the bright side of life didn't exist before September 1st, 2020. And now so many amazing things have happened. And I literally am in the sole person. Like I have no other person that helps me with my podcast. And that's a great feeling. So it's been an awesome journey. Like this is what has helped me love myself and come back to loving myself.
Yeah, I love that, the very challenge has been like the source of your strength. So
Yep.
you literally turn the biggest challenge, the biggest obstacle into your biggest strength or superpower, and now you're using it to help others. So um yeah, definitely hero worthy on the hero's journey. So I know you follow I Spark Change,
Mhm.
and as far as what we talk about is we talk about that every action has that ripple effect that goes far beyond the initial act, that you do something and hopefully it's something positive, and then that continues on, just like if you were to throw a stone in a calm lake and then you see all the ripples that go farther out than you
Yeah.
can even see. So a big part of being a hero is really that ripple effect of your actions, where we call it where you're engaging your audience in your mission, because that's the E for hero, is that you're engaging them in your mission, that they are now going out there and showing others how to be the bright side of life, or how to love themselves in your case. So tell me, share, if you can, share a story of some positive change, something where you saw that ripple effect as a result of your work, on the bright side of life, or just in what you're doing in general.
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories that I have just realized the past like 2 months or so is I have a best friend, and we've been best friends since high school, and we've always been super close, but I guess there were things that we just didn't talk she didn't talk about. I have always been an open book. Um, and through my podcast and making my post on social media, she is currently going through a divorce and a really hard time in her life. She has never been like lived on her own, and now she's a single mom, which obviously I was a single mom for 16 years. Um she has opened up to me so much about her personal struggles that before this, that's not the way that she operated. I don't think she wanted people to know she was struggling, that she didn't want to be vulnerable, and now she has told me this. Like she has bought some self-help books. The other day I tagged her in a post about it was self-love day, and I was like, I went out and bought myself roses. I didn't need my boyfriend to. I wanted to buy my own self roses. This was before Valentine's Day. Because I just wanted to say I love you, Melissa Bright. And I tagged her in that post. And not even 10 minutes later, she sent me a picture of her going to buy herself roses because she loved herself. And that has been a really big impact because now our relationship has truly changed because she has came to me and been vulnerable to me in a way that she never has before, and that just says, Melissa, I trust you and I know you're not going to have judgment on my story and what I'm going through. uh, and I feel like that takes a lot of courage for even the closest people to you that know you to become vulnerable. um, I feel like that's one of the biggest things that has happened, and it's been beautiful.
Yeah, that's definitely a ripple effect, which I didn't mention is the R from hero, but so that takes us to the O. Okay, and the O is that a hero opens their heart to the world, that they are, and this, you gave us the perfect segue, even though you didn't know we were going to talk about this, Melissa, but because the O is where they are authentic and vulnerable, and they can open their heart to others and to the world, and in doing so they're going to make a deeper connection with others. I'm sure you do it with your podcast. I've seen it, and you're obviously doing it with your friend there in that example that you just gave us. So now I'm going to ask you to open your heart to our listeners a little bit, to open up, to be vulnerable, and share a funny or embarrassing or like an unexpected story of something that's happened on your hero's journey, something that's happened along the way.
Oh my gosh. Okay. See, this is what I get for asking you those 10 questions on my podcast.
I love those 10 questions. Those are
No.
great.
Okay. Embarrassing on my hero's journey. I really have to think about this.
Funny, embarrassing, memorable. It could be memorable.
Okay. Um, I want it to be good and not just a whatever answer. So I'm trying to go back through my 70 guests of stuff and then nothing is coming to me. Hmm. You stumped me, Rick. Okay.
I guess that's a good thing is that you've had while it's been an eventful journey and you've turned your challenges, maybe there haven't been, a lot of funny pitfalls, a lot of, comedic occurrences along the way.
Well, I'm sure there has. I can't think of any. I'm sure, of course, like at being a podcaster and me never interviewing people before this, I'm sure that I've stumbled over my words. I say a lot as we know. Yeah, I have to forfeit that question, and if something comes to me, I'm gonna let you know. For memorable moments, I could say so many moments. I mean, every single guest on my podcast has impacted me in some shape, way, or form because they all have so many different stories. So I'm gonna put that one on the back burner and try to think if I can think of one that's
Yeah, I
funny.
like your answer though about every guest being a memorable moment and learning from every guest, and you're taking something away from them, because that's a big part of growth on our journey. Is not just, we don't have all the answers, we don't know it
Mm-mm.
all, and so to learn from others is where we get a lot of that hero strength. So tell me, as now that you've had a successful podcast, and I remember you had your year anniversary, and now you're working on two, and doing well, and everything's going great. So what's some advice that you would give to someone who's just starting out on their journey? Maybe they're just trying to figure out what is their purpose, or where they want to be, or who they need to be. Since you figure that out for yourself, I mean, I obviously it's continuous growth, but what would you tell to that person that's just starting out?
Yeah, so there's so many different things of advice that I could say, but the first one is to not listen to the uh little voices in your head that says, "I can't do this. I'm not qualified. There's somebody out there that is killing it so much more than me. They have a podcast that's like mine. They're doing whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be about a podcast. Do not sell yourself short. You are deserving of your hero's journey just as anybody else is. And what you are experiencing is imposter syndrome. You're feeling like a fraud. You're feeling like everybody else is deserving, but why could that be me? It absolutely, absolutely can. And you're gonna, I'm there's no question about it. You're gonna have those doubtful moments that come up in your head and to tell you you can't do it. And you just have to keep doing something every day to prove yourself. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. And I just did that. And I just did that. Um, but just to know you're worthy of any kind of journey, you're worthy of all the great things that happen on the way of that journey.
Well, that's awesome, and I think that is fantastic advice for the people that are just starting out, because when they do what you did, when they feel the fear and then they face it and they do whatever it is, they do it anyways, then all of a sudden now you're past it and now you've grown, and then it's like, yeah, no big deal. I mean, it's you know, I think an interesting thing is that so many of us as adults, we get stuck in that fear, and in the imposter syndrome and the analysis paralysis or whatever it is, and we don't take action because we're afraid. When we think back to when we're little kids, like if we're learning to ride a bike, sure, we're probably afraid that we're going to fall or whatever, but you try 100 times, you just keep going and going. Or a baby learning to walk, like you don't just like give up after a few times, like, well, I'm afraid, I'm not going to do it. Like, you just
Right.
do those things. You have the fear, you go down the biggest slide, you jump off, something, whatever, and then somehow I think just the world gets to us, and then it starts putting those, that negative self-talk, like you mentioned, that doubt in our mind, And so
Yeah.
getting past that, I mean, that's one thing that we're doing with iSpark Change is to get past that, where people will realize that, they have strength, that they are heroes in their own right, that they can be impactful and make a difference in the world. Um, so our goal at iSpark Change, Melissa, is to positively impact 1 billion people in the next 5 years through our community, through our work. And we can't do this alone. That's why we
Yeah.
need the help of leaders like you to show others the way, because many people feel, as I used to, that they're too small, that they can't make a difference, that they're just one person. And what are their actions, just that one person?
Right.
What are those the actions of just one person gonna do? So we value your thoughts and opinions as a social impact hero. So I'm going to ask you to peer into our iSpark Change crystal ball, and I want you to tell me, what can the world become if everyone believes that they have an impact on our future?
Oh my gosh. The first words that come to mind is the world can just become more easygoing, to not like it doesn't have to be serious, even though I know there are serious things happening every day. Um, it can be more accepting. I really like to think about accepting people and accepting your neighbors, whoever, um, and to show that, yeah, you are absolutely worthy of making a change. But that's something that just in our communities. I mean, you and I don't live anywhere near each other. So like if we were starting to do like this imposter syndrome of like why am I going to try to go affect a billion people's lives? Like me and you, we can connect. Like I'm in St. Louis, you're I think in Texas, like but we can start connecting these dots and just making all these changes. And just to kind of bring it back around, I just think of a less mean world and more easygoing. That's my
Yeah, and
answer.
and what a beautiful world! What a beautiful world that would be, wouldn't it? I mean, people are
Yes.
so many people, especially in the past 2 years, they just seem to be stressed and on edge, kind of constantly. I
Yeah.
mean, just constantly. And imagine if it was everybody was easygoing. And I'd say for myself, I've gotten to that place of that easygoing place where I've gone through those challenges and faced all those demons, into where I was like, okay, now I just I know that I can just keep plugging away and
Yeah.
keep doing what I do to help others, and work on it till I reach a billion. Work on it till the day I die, or
Yeah.
until we reach a billion, and then keep going beyond that. But
Yeah. Can I
well,
say something?
yeah, absolutely.
Something I wanna note, like, about COVID, and stuff, and I know everybody had different experiences during COVID and even now, but if there's one thing I can say is that it brought us so many of us to literally our knees. I know you wrote your book during COVID. It was like we had to figure out what the heck we were going to do next. Like, now we didn't have a choice. And so many people had to figure that out. And so if you are listening and you are one that had a small business or something and lost your small business, I am so very sorry, but this is encouraging you to go on to the next thing and to grow. And it absolutely taught us to grow and to know like that we are even capable of more than we thought. Maybe you were comfortable where you were in 2020, and now this got you to go to a whole nother comfort zone. My entire life changed because of COVID. And maybe I wouldn't be where I am if the whole world didn't shut down and travel was still going. And so I just want people to acknowledge, like, you guys have probably done some amazing things because of 2020 and having to pivot and things like that. So you should be proud of yourself.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Melissa, because I agree completely. And in the past couple of years, I've spoken with people from all over the world, and I mean hundreds, and they're all people that have grown, that have evolved and adapted, and they're making the world a better place. And as I peer into that crystal ball, I believe that years from now, decades from now, or 100 years from now, the history books will look back at this time as a period of growth and a period of rebirth, and almost like a Renaissance period. The
Wow.
Renaissance period came out of the Dark Ages, and that it'll be all this growth and rebirth that comes out of the challenging times of 2020 and 21 and 22, just kind of this time that we're in. And I honestly believe that, and hopefully I live to see that written in the history books.
Right.
I could be like, hey, I said that in the crystal ball way back when. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all part of the beautiful world that can become. And so
Yep.
thank you for sharing that with everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us, Melissa, before we go, how can our listeners, how can people connect with you? How can they find you and see all the wonderful work that you're doing?
Yeah. So everything is right on the bright side of life podcast.com. That has obviously all of my podcast episodes. But if you want to connect with me via email or you want to look me up on socials, all your stuff, that's the central hub to find me and connect me.
Well, awesome. Well, we will put that in the show notes and make sure that people know how to go to the bright side of life. Very easy. You can find Melissa there. We'll make sure that it's all tagged when we upload the show. And it's been fantastic speaking with you, Melissa. Thank you very much for being on the iSpark Change podcast, and thank you for being a social impact hero.
Thank you, Rick. This has been awesome. Such a great conversation. You are doing amazing things. And thank you for everything that you do.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you sharing your heart and your wisdom with our audience. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.